There we go. All right. Hi, gents. Thanks again. Last late night for a while, hopefully. Tonight we're doing the last case. Thank you for joining me again. It's been a journey. Um, yeah, the South African Excel Championship 2024 is officially over, and we're recording the walkthrough of the final case. So we had five cases over the competition, and they were interesting. And I think we got a compliment from one of the participants over the weekend as well, where he said he doesn't know how we keep on thinking of new ideas and coming up with new cases. Um, so tonight's case is essentially something that inspired me while I was camping in the Kruger National Park, while I was playing Snap, the famous card game with my 4.5 year old, teaching her how to play it. And then while I was thinking, well, if I can teach a 4.5 year old how to play, it's probably not that bad when you need to model it. When I developed the case, I realized I'm wrong. It was quite a difficult case. I think if you have a lot of experience in these kinds of games, and if you have seen similar cases before, maybe not. There's a couple of tricks and there's a couple of things to set up, and then I think it's pretty simple in my opinion. I would almost say that Steyn's farming in the land of vines level 7 is a lot more difficult from my perspective. But I think it depends on who you are as well and what your background is, etc. I know one of our regular competitors also said that he hates card game cases, um, and I think you develop a knack for certain kinds of cases and what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy. I I actually like card game cases. Not that I'm always very good at them, but I usually enjoy them. So I've got a frog in my. All right, so yeah, maybe just to mention. So we will release all the results of the competition of the past weekend very soon, and like I said, the cases will all be on the shop. I'll also make sure that there's a bundle sort of cases that you could buy that allows you to buy all five cases from this year's South African Excel Championships. And um, and yeah, I mean, talk to us on the socials and reach out to us on YouTube and stuff as well. We're all on LinkedIn as well. We're quite active. So if you want to ask us questions or you want to just like share stuff with us, please do. And then yeah, I guess a word of thanks to our sponsors as well. This year we had three sponsors. We had Bidvest Alice or Bidvest Advisory Services. If you go and Google Bidvest Alice, you'll see what Bidvest Alice is all about. Very passionate about the competition along with me, because of the fact that it involves problem solving using technology, and using Excel, which is something that everyone should be good at in business, in my opinion. And then we also had Excel Academy, the guys Dan and Avi. Shout out to you guys for your contributions as well. A great team of folks presenting Excel training globally, online and in person in South Africa. I think they'll travel as well. And then we also have my BI that also sponsored us this year. Right. So without further ado, let's talk about the case. Um, Sorry, I promise I won't do all the talking. Just a quick introduction. So the case was developed and designed by me, but then tested by Jason and Steyn and Diarmuid early as well. Um, and yeah, so the case is essentially, like I said, it's about the game Snap, and a very famous card game. So essentially, you have 52 cards, fairly simple rules. Basically, those 52 cards are dealt between two players in this case. In the real world, it can be dealt between 8 players, but for this case, we only went with two. So in this case, it means that each player gets 26 cards each. Player one is always dealt the first card in the deck, and essentially you take turns flipping over the top card from your deck, and if there's a match on value, it's a snap. So if I put down a 5 and Jason puts down a 5, that is a snap condition, and the first player to shout snap and actually slap their hand, it's actually just shouting. But if you in South Africa, we slap our hand, and if your hand is first, you take the cards, and the principle or the purpose of the game is to make the other person run out of cards, and that's basically it. So that's as simple as it is, but like I said, not very simple when you start to model it. Maybe let me start. So let's start with level 1, but maybe let me start with Steyn. Steyn, how did you attempt level 1? We said very easy. I know you always have interesting ways to do these functions with like a one cell formula kind of thing.
Well, I did use a one cell formula where I used the let formula first to split the string into different elements, and then I counted how many elements was there, and then I did an index to pull the second last element.
Okay.
But I realized
you want to maybe share your screen?
Okay. Yes. So I used the text split, which then splits it out here. For example, you can see the output from the first text split. And then I did a count, and then I did an index of that string. There's only one row, and the value I looked for was the number of counts less 1, and then displays. But I also realized what you can also do, since you're looking for the second last element, you can probably do something like a right, 5, and then put that for a 6, and then left that, 2, and then you just need to be careful of tens. But if you then look at quickly, you can see there's no tens there. So this is a quick way.
A 10 would be 3 characters
Yes.
in length, essentially. Yeah. So maybe just for the viewers that haven't seen the case, the question is, what is the first card that is played in this round? The trick is that okay, so we said that player 1 gets dealt the first card and always takes the first turn. But the problem is that the cards are actually given to you in order of how a dealer would receive the card, so face down. So that means the first card would actually become the last card in player 1's deck. So the second last card in the starting deck would be the first card that player 1 plays if he or she goes first. And that's why you want to extract the second last card from the actual string. Jason, how did you go about doing it?
Yeah, so fairly similar to Steyn. Look, I think Renier, I think it's worth pointing out that I think some people struggled with the case because of the sort of dealing logic, right? But once you kind of got your head around that, then actually things flowed quite nicely. So once you actually had your deck of cards dealt and you knew which cards were playing first and second and third and fourth, once you cracked that, then you could kind of flow on from there. But I think quite a few people got stuck just on that logic. So what I ended up doing was sort of similar in nature, but I used a wrap rows, comma 2, so to put the cards into 2 columns. And then I used the take function, which is relatively new. The nice thing about take is that you take says, which value am I taking? I'm taking the first one or the first 2 rows or the first 3 rows. But if you give it a -1, it'll give you the bottom card. And then row and column. So if you take row -1, it's the bottom row, so you don't have to do the count of the rows, which is quite cool to know. And then column 1, so take column 1 but the bottom row. And so what that looks like, sort of step by step, I suppose, is if you do it, the same text split that Steyn did of the text. I think useful to know the column delimiter here is the semicolon space, because there were spaces. So that splits out, that text into the string of all the cards.
It negates the need for something like a trim or something like, okay, now I've got a space, now I need to get rid of my space. You actually put the space in the column delimiter.
Yep. Then I wrap that into twos, because you got player 1, player 2, player 1, player 2, player 1, player 2. And then from this point, if you then say take that range -1, the row -1, bottom row, and column 1, then you get player 1's card, the first card that they will play, which is the last card they were dealt, essentially. So that's how I approached it and copied that down.
Yeah, I like that. I tried different methods. I think I like yours the most, Jason. But I also used drop and take, just to mention them. So essentially, all I did was I did the same text split with the semicolon space, and then I did a drop and a take. So I didn't do the wrap rows initially. I wanted to take the last two cards, so take -2, and then drop the last one. So to do sort of like a mid kind of thing. So I did this just to sort of just to show what the drop and the take can do. And then the other one is also the famous index. So I just did an index of the 51st card. So similar to Steyn's logic, but I mean, we know that there's 52 cards. We know that we're looking for the second last card, so it's the 51st card. So I just did an index of 51. Yeah, I think that was about it for level 1. Maybe we can do bonus. We talk about bonus 1 as well while we're at it, because bonus 1 had relevance to level 1 as well. And essentially the question was just which suit is played most during level 1. Quick and dirty method for me, just another trick that I actually learned from Jason, is to actually take what's given to you. And I basically just copied out these characters to get my suits quickly, because I need to get a list of suits. And then what I did was I pasted them there and did a text split on them with a comma, so that I've got my suits there, and I actually named them suits as well if I had to use them again. So that it's nice, because then I have my suits list there, and then for this to extract the suits from each of the answers, I just did a write formula, just to mention that you don't require. You'll see that the second parameter is actually optional, so it doesn't require a number of characters. If you just extract one, the left works the same way. Left and right works the same way. If you just want to take one character, you just need to say right of that, and it'll take that character. So to extract the actual suits, and then I just did a count if on that on that range to determine which suit was played most. And I mean, if I was in competition mode, I would have possibly just copy pasted or just referred to the cell, but just to show how the defining of suits could be helpful, I did an X lookup to say, well, 10, look for the nearest or for that number, or the next lowest, or the next highest number, or the next smaller value, or whatever, and then bring that back from suits. And essentially got that answer to be hearts. Maybe you guys can share as well if you had a different method or a cooler method to do bonus 1.
I did almost exactly the same, to the extent I even named an array of hard-coded suits as suits. Exactly the same. You can see we've been doing this for a while and feeding off one another, because we think it's the same way.
That's exactly it.
But the only thing that I did differently was I did the suits right, count if. The only thing that I did differently was I didn't do an X lookup to the next smallest number. I sorted the values largest to smallest, and then just I sorted the suit by the count. So I did a sort by suits against the count column, and then took the first one, basically. But same outcome. same outcome. I mean, 90% the same as you. Yeah.
All right. So maybe Jason, you can take us through your level 2. How'd you go? How'd you do that?
Yeah, sure. So level 2, I had already broken away into a separate sheet. And actually, what I set up for level 2 I ended up sort of just building on it for level 3, not 4, because 4 had the different rules, which we'll get to, and 5. So 2, 3, and 5 I kind of did in one sort of section. Did you also do that, Steyn?
Yes.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I want to show from what I did here was how I built out the order of the cards as they get dealt. And I put this into a bit of a let function, using some of the logic that we described under level 1, but I inverted it already at this point. And the sort of real sort of I guess the trick here. So the wrap rows text split, 2 that we've seen already. That's just how you deal the cards into 2 columns, into 2 piles. But then I had player 1's cards to invert the column. I said, I'm going to read from the inside first. Give me the index of deal, which is the 2 columns up front. What we discussed yesterday in the case was if you have an index with a 0, it will give you all the rows, or you could leave that blank, give you all the rows, and give me column 1, because I had 2 columns in my wrap rows. And for player 2, I said index, give me all the rows, 2, column 2. So I had, player 1 is column 1, player 2 is column 2. And then to invert the range, then I wrap. So I have now a column of just player 1's cards. Again, take the index of that, but which row do you take? I combine that with a sequence function. And the sequence function, how many rows do you want? You want as many rows as you've dealt, so that gives you 26. And then where do you start? You start at 26, and then you step -1. So your sequence will go 26, 25, 24, 23. And so if you do an index of that sequence, 25, 26, 25, 24, 23, you essentially invert the range. And so I had a player 1 on column 1, a player 2 on column 2, and then I called a play both. I just H-stacked those 2 together to give me back essentially the wrap rows from the beginning inverted. And that's how I inverted the deck. And I ended up then using that in my... I sort of went straight to a new tab to sort of do the fairly traditional, pull in the example, should be example 2 to start with, I suppose. Pull in the string of cards using the XLOOKUP on the case on the game number and the card values. This is my let function to show the inverted dealt cards. So this is the order that they get played in, and then to actually move on to what the question is for level 2, the question is, what is the card value that is snapped on first? So what value gets snapped first in this round? And so I guess you're looking for the very first snap. So the first step is you've got the cards that are dealt. In the rules that you set out, Renier, for levels 2, 3, 5, and 6, you only were looking at the value, not the suit. And so to strip out the value, you might get tricked into thinking you can do a left, 1, but then, as Steyn mentioned, you got to watch out for a 10, because a 10 has got 2 characters, not 1 character. And so if you do a left of the card range, length -1, because the suit value is always a 1. So if you've got a 10 of hearts, it'll be 3 characters, and so you subtract 1 from that, you'll get the 2 characters with the length -1. So that strips out the values.
Or if you do it like Steyn, you get a 1 and you substitute that with a 10. That's something that Steyn does a lot. I know.
That's true, because the ace is not there, right? Yeah.
But what you can also do is just substitute the 1 or a 0. So it takes the 10 and turns it to a 1 character. And then you just need to know that if you have a 1 or a 0, depending on what you substitute, that is actually a 10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know that in one of the cases very long ago, I'm talking, if I talk about very long ago, I'm talking about like 3 or 4 years ago, there was a card game case where I just think you had to do something with the suits only or something like that. And I know that someone went and solved I think it was Dim that solved the whole level with a find and replace. And he found it and replaced something specifically, and it. So for this case, you could have gone and substituted anywhere where you found in the number 10 before you start across all the games. You could have like found and replaced 10, and you could have replaced it with anything of your liking, as long as it's not used in the sort of pattern, right? So you could have replaced it with the letter T to be a 10. And then you work with a T as a 10. You just remember it's a 10. So just for the participants out there, if you're struggling with, you didn't know how to strip out 2 characters instead of 1, there's another option.
And the character, and using a sort of an alphabetic character here is not an issue because you've already got ace, king, queen, jack, right? So having a T, like, so why not? It's a good tip. Yeah. Okay, so once you've got the values set out, then to build up the snap is, I guess, the logic of whether you're matching. So obviously, I've just hard coded a 0 for the first one. You can't get a snap on the first turn. Then to check whether you've got a snap, you check, is the value that I'm playing equal to the value that was played previously. The only trick here, which I think some people missed initially when they attempted it, is that you won't get a snap if there was a snap on the last turn. And so I used a not of the previous turn to basically multiply by 0 if there was a snap on the last turn. And so the player 2 snap you can compare against player 1 on the same turn. But for player 1, you need to look at player 2's previous turn, and you just offset the not and the reference point up 1, and then those formulas essentially then copy down, and then you hit the first snap where there is the same value, and then I believe I would have done. What I was thinking I did is just did a lookup for 1 on the game number. What I actually did was I ended up doing a 2-column ignoring errors of all the snaps, and then oh no, that's why I had to do that. You're looking for the value that was played. I could have done a lookup on the value that was played, but anyway, I ended up putting together a range of the snaps that were hit in that game, which actually came in handy later. And then just took the first value that came out of that array, and then that with a data table gave me level 2.
I like that trick where you actually remove, because with is it the 2-call that you use there? But the 2-call where you can actually remove errors and blanks and something else as well. Yeah. So your second parameter allows you to remove different kinds of things.
Correct. Yeah, which is really handy. And in fact, I haven't got into it because it's not yet relevant, but I ignored the same thing over here with the 2-row, which I'll chat about separately later. But that's a really handy trick to know. So normally when you talk about sort of financial modeling or Excel, you try and avoid errors in your workbook. 1, because it looks really unprofessional, and 2, it looks like something dodgy is happening. But if you know how to use them, they can be really powerful.
Yes.
And I force NA errors often in my models where I want to build charts and do fancy sort of data labeling. Because if you put a 0 in, then your line chart will hit the x-axis, whereas if you put an NA error in, it'll just leave a gap. It's like it's not there. So sometimes you can force errors, and they can be really helpful.
And there we've got a shout out to the most underused function in Excel, the NA function.
That's exactly the function that we use. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to force an NA, you just use the NA function to actually say. So let's say, for instance, you have an if error. You could change an error into an NA if you wanted to. So even if it's a val error or a div by zero error, it can become an NA error. But then you also have the if now, if not applicable. That's also a nice one to know, to actually handle only not applicables. So just a shout out to those functions. But I just want to show what I did. Very similar. I didn't actually think of the wrap rows, so I'm quite jealous. But essentially all I did was I worked horizontally. So it depends on the case whether I work horizontally or vertically. I actually prefer how you did it, in some ways, but then in other ways I prefer how I did it, because I think some steps were actually simpler in my model. And essentially all I did was exact same setup as always, copy paste the example number across, do an X lookup across the whole case. So I can recommend actually doing that across the whole case, because the format and the function and the way that everything is set up is exactly the same across all the levels. So it means that if you can build on it, you can utilize the same sheet every time. So I literally copied level 2 to level 3 to level 4 to level 5 to level 6. I used the same thing and I just built on it. I could have done everything in one, but then I could break something in the so usually how I work, I could break something in earlier levels by doing something in later levels, and then I don't know, and then I forget, and I get 0 for level 2, for instance. So that's why I like splitting them out over multiple sheets. And then I did the text split, normal text split. Over here, I did the reverse. So I think a little simpler than yours, because I did the reverse up front. And it's essentially the same logic. So I also did the index of that split. But I just started with all 52 cards, stepped backwards by one. So that's one of the tricks that you needed in this case. Otherwise, you would have struggled. And then I literally just did a 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 2-1 to say who's it dealt to after the actual reverse takes place. So in actual fact, it's dealt from this side like that. And then I did a filter to get the hand for player 1 and player 2. So essentially just did a filter on what I just did to allocate to each player. And then I had both players' hands already in the sequence of how it's played. And then I took it back into the order played with a 2-row. And I did a 2-row by scan by column true. So just so that people know, you can do a 2-row, and it can either work by row or it can work by column. So or actually the other way around. So it can actually go vertically or horizontally. And then I would just do a sense check just to say, does it make sense? And I basically looked at the last 2 cards to say, okay, six of clubs, jack of clubs, 6 of clubs, jack of clubs, got it. Okay, so I've got my hands ready, and then basically took that back to rows to see, well, played first, second, played first, second. Did the same thing as you did with the left length -1, and then my snap condition, I think, is a little bit simpler. All I did was I said, well, so I used the AND operator, and I used the double dash again to make it a number, and so yeah, the double dash, because otherwise it would have been a true, false, true, false, true, false, or false, false, false. And then if you have a false and a true, it widens the column, and I get hashes and stuff across. So I just wanted numbers, and that's why I did the double dash. So all I did was my AND operator is just saying, is my current card and my previous card the same? And is my previous snap not a 1? And that's it. And that logic I could pull through across all the way. And then I just did an X lookup for the first 1 in this list and return the first the corresponding value. So my X lookup is just basically looking for the first 1, returns the actual corresponding value. And then did a data table to, again, with a sequence of 20 games, starting at game 11, did a sequence across. Steyn, any nuggets of wisdom that you can add there?
Well, I also used a sequence to reverse that, and then I did a wrap row, and then I had to deal with player 2's, which got the last card, was first, and then player 1. So I had to switch that around. But also, if I had to do it again, what I would do is do separate sequences, and also you can step. Instead of doing a one step, you can do a two-step. So then you don't need to do your filter and
Yeah, that's a good idea. You do a two-step so that you start at card 52 and then card 50 and then card 48 to actually allocate that to that player, and you just do the the odds for the other player, the odds and the evens,
yeah.
depending on the player. That's a cool trick. I like that. All right, so that's level 2. So I think a pretty difficult level 2 setup wise, but then once you've set that up, level 3, 4, 5, level 3, 4, and 5 to me was not that difficult actually. So once you got past the how to split, how to allocate, how to reverse, the rest of the logic is pretty simple. So again, pretty simple formulas, nothing overly complex to get your answer, but it's all in how you build it and how you logically lay it out for yourself. And I think it's quite daunting. And if you want to do like a one cell formula and you don't have the experience, you could fall flat on your face. If you build it out like we did, um, you actually have a chance, and that's my experience. So let's talk level 3. So level 3, just going to share my screen just to talk through it. So level 3, I think was pretty simple. Like I said, after level 2, the question was during which round is the second snap in play. The biggest reason for level 3 is to bring the principle of rounds into the game. And a round, as we said, is defined by each player getting a chance to play. I like your setup, Jason, because your rounds were actually you played both players in a round. So a round is on one row, and that makes this, I think this level, I think your setup would actually benefit from it a lot more than mine. And then basically I also say that a round consists of a play by both player 1 and 2, and then a snap condition doesn't end a round or start a new one. So it means your rounds will always be player 1 plays, player 2 plays, player 1 plays, player 2 plays, etc. Okay, and then
That was very kind of you, Renier. Thank you.
Yeah, otherwise I would have also struggled with the setup, and then it just becomes nightmare. And then we just say, remember that a snap would see the middle pile being collected by the player that shouted snap. So a snap cannot occur directly after another snap condition, and that was already evident in round 2, but not necessary for round 2. You didn't have to handle those cases in round 2 because you're only looking at the first snap. Now you're looking for the second snap, so you must handle those cases, because in a lot of examples we saw that there's a 9 that's played, there's another 9 that's played, and then after that there's another 9 that's played, but the third 9 is the first card of the new pile. Yeah, so and then we give an example. So just to quickly show what I did for level 3, the only, I think, addition from the previous round was bringing in, from the previous level, was bringing in the principle of round. Started off with a 1 and then just did a little if formula to say if the previous one is equal to the one before that, then start with that number plus 1, otherwise take the number next to it, so that it basically steps by 2. I know that there's better ways to do that, but that was my my quick and dirty way to show rounds. And then I basically just did a little trick that's also nice, where if you do, and I'm just going to show how I set that up. So I want to do a running total essentially. So essentially I just do a sum, and then I would click on the value that I want to do the running total on, and then I go shift and and essentially what's it called, colon, and that immediately duplicates that value for me. And then I just need to like select the first part. So I just go and select the first part and lock that, so that what happens is it runs the total. So the first one is just summing one. The second one is summing that one and the previous one. The 10th one is summing the past 10. And with that, I've got the ability to see immediately when do I get to my second snap. But then it's also nice for the later setups, because I can also quickly and easily see how many snaps I had on value. So that there's two benefits to the method. And then all I did was I just looked up the number 2 and looked up the round. So I returned the round. So look up the number 2, return the round, and that's it. So that was level 3 for me. I don't know if you guys have any other nuggets of wisdom to share.
I did the same thing as you. I built up a snap counter. I'll show you. I built up a snap counter and in fact, in this case, I did do a lookup for the number 2. So very, very much the same as you. I guess the only thing that I'll add as a sort of a different spin on the way that you built up your running total is that because you've got a range of 1s and 0s for the snaps, which you also have, it's as far as I know, it's a slightly more efficient from a calculation speed perspective to just take the previous running total value and add the 1, basically. So you run down. So you get the same outcome as your expanding range, but
it's more lightweight.
It's much more lightweight. So if you think about the very last value, Excel is summing up 2 values, whereas if in your case, you're summing 26 values.
Correct.
And if you've got a big data set and you want a running total, the expanding range is, I think, the sort of natural way to think about doing it. But if you've got 1 million rows, then Excel is summing up 1 million rows for the bottom one, 999,999 rows for the second one.
Yeah.
And so the calculation drain is quite heavy, rather than just having 1 million rows times 2 values. And I think from a calculation efficiency perspective, it's slightly better. But you wouldn't even notice that on a model this size, but it becomes relevant in bigger files.
100%. So I think that's a good pro tip if you're building large models. Definitely, I agree. That's the better way to go. Just another thing that I just want to mention is the fact that you use the sum. So the nice trick there, for the other pro tip for the participants out there, is you don't have to start M4 with the 0. It can actually sum the word snap count and the value 0 between M4 and L5, and it won't give you an error. If you had gone M4 plus M4 plus L5, you'd get value errors and everything is broken and you start crying. But if you use the sum function, it's clever enough to treat that as a not applicable or a 0 or a blank or a whatever, because it's text. So that's another pro tip out there. Steyn, anything to add there?
Yeah, so let me share my screen. So I had my 2 columns for the winning cards, and then I did just a text join to get them in. And then I took the second element from the text join, and then I just ran the X match on both columns, and then took the lowest of the numbers to get my second win.
Yeah, cool. Again, multiple ways to do it, and a very clever method to do that. So nice. Okay, let's get to level 4. So Steyn, maybe you can just showcase your level 4, because I think it's your turn now. And then I'll quickly just show what I did there as well.
Yes, so basically I built on my previous case, but instead of just checking the rank of the card, I also checked the suit of the card. And then I used the OR function to see if it's OR based on a suit, snapping on a suit, or snapping on the one that I get. And then it would have resulted in a true or a false, and then I can turn it into a 1 or 0 just by multiplying it by 1.
Yeah, nice. I think the only other thing that you had to handle for there is if you get a suit snap directly after a value snap, or a value snap directly after a suit snap, you shouldn't get another snap immediately. So the only thing I added from level 3 to level 4 is essentially these 3 rows. It would be suit snap, and suit snap count. And essentially, when I look at the suit snap, I'm basically looking at whether there's a value snap in the previous round. If there's no value snap in the previous round, and there's no suit snap in the previous round, then if both are the same, it is a snap from a suit perspective, so that you don't get the suit snap directly after the value snap, and vice versa. So that meant that I had to write that logic into the value snap as well, to just check for the suit snap. Again, just my AND operator, which is reasonably simple. And then also did the same running total, as Jason. The question here, just for the participants who haven't done the case, was how many snaps in total. But now for this round, you actually look at values and suits. So my running total could have solved that for me. So I just did a sum of those two values in the end to get to the actual number, data table again, and that was it. Seeing bonus 4, we can get into bonus 4, but Jason, did you have anything that you wanted to add there?
Nothing really worth sharing. I was very similar to Steyn's case. I used the OR function on the values or the suits, and then multiplied. So the same logic I explained, basically just looking at 2 columns or 2 sets of columns instead of 1 set of columns. And then I used the not of the snap in the previous round again. So much the same, not much more to add than that.
Cool. So if we look at the bonus question 2, that had relevance to level 4, which is the one we just looked at, and essentially the question was, in level 4, which game saw the most or saw the least amount of snap conditions? So in the end, it's literally just looking for the lowest answer from level 4, and that was game 62. So if we look at game 62, that was essentially 5. And it's by far the lowest number of snaps from these cards. So again, I just used the X lookup for the next for 0. I was looking for 0 snaps, and the next larger item on the X lookup, and brought back the game number as a sort of return array. And then I guess we can't talk about. Okay, so let's cover the bonus later. Let's go to level 5. Level 5 was actually asking. We're back to card values only, so suits were only applicable to level 4. Do not take suits into account for these games. Assume the player who places the card that results in a snap condition calls snap first. In other words, wins the snap pile in the center. Just looking at the starting hands or decks. So that means just the first 52 cards, or the first 26 cards in every player's hand. How many cards did the player who collected the most cards in these games collect? Again, in my opinion, a very simple addition to your model, if you've set it up properly. So for level 5, I basically copied level 3 across, because level 4 contained the suits as well. And then all I did was I built a little card counter, and my card counter is essentially just seeing, is the previous round a snap? If it's not, just add add 1 to it. If it is a snap, start with 1 again. Which meant that every time a snap condition occurred, in this case where there's a snap condition, runs up to 4 cards, but then starts at 1 in the next round. runs up to 13, there's a snap condition, counts up or just takes 13 and it starts again. And then all I did was I wrote a little if function there to say, if there's a snap and it's played by player 1, then take the card counter. If it's a snap and it's played by player 2, take the card counter. And essentially that just laid out all of the cards won by each player on every snap condition. And so just to reiterate, the logic is if player 2 places the card that causes the snap, player 2 wins. That's the assumption. If player 1 places the card that creates the snap condition, that player wins that number of cards. And then I had a basic sum in the end and a basic max to get the answer. I don't know if you guys had any different methods there.
Yeah, I was almost exactly the same as you. Same sort of cards down, and then count where there was a snap, count, just take the number. For some reason, which I can't fathom, I didn't look at whether there was a snap in the previous round. I looked at whether there was a snap in the current round, and so then when I had to do the number of cards that were picked up, I had to add 1, which, like, in hindsight, looking at yours, just seems like really silly. Why would I do that? So I ended up, like, in example 5, the first snap the guy picks up 4, so my card counter goes 1, 2, 3, 0, and then I pick up 3 plus 1. What was I thinking? But I mean, essentially, it's the same approach. Instead of doing the previous round snap, I just did the existing round snap and then added 1. Anyway, same result. Basic. The count of all the cards did a sum of the columns, max of the 2. Everything else is the same. But I'm looking at myself thinking, what was I doing? Anyway, yeah.
Steyn, any other nuggets of wisdom?
Yeah, no, I did it the same as you, but because I had different columns for player 1 and player 2, my formula was a bit easier because I didn't have to check is it player 1 or player 2. I just had to check the column for player 1 and 2, and then I did a running total of the number of cards picked up by each player.
Cool. Okay, so that was level 5. Let's get into level 6 because that one was by far the most difficult and the most interesting one as well. So level 6 was asking, let me just make sure I share my screen again. Level 6 was saying the same rules apply as on level 5. During which round does the losing player run out of cards? I.e., the first round, the losing player is unable to play a card. Remember that cards won get placed at the bottom or end of the remaining hand or deck of the winning player, and the game is lost when a player runs out of all cards in hand. Cards added to the winner's hand is placed to be played in the same order as they were played previously, and therefore the order is not inverted. So that was another gift from me, if anyone got there. But essentially, it's not a gift from me. It's how Snap works. So essentially, I've got cards face down in my hand. I play them face up. But when I place them back after I've won, I put them at the bottom of my deck, but I take them face down again. So there's no inversion of the card values, which was nice. And then we gave an example. So for level 6, okay, so maybe let me not share first. I've shared my level 5 first. Steyn, show us your level 6. Do you have some cool conditional formatting for us again?
No. The first thing I realized when trying level 6 was that my existing format wouldn't, or it wouldn't have been able to handle the recursive. So I had to build my model from scratch.
Mm.
And then basically what I did is I used the existing formats to basically, I keep track of player 1's hand and player 2 hand. And then I used the formula, the text before and text after. So text before to get the first card, and then text after to get the remaining hand of that remains. And if the person won, then I just add the win or the running pack that I also kept track of at the end to the player's hand. And then I was able to just copy it down?
I think your method is a lot more elegant than mine. I had to do the same. Also, I had to rebuild from scratch when I got to level 6. Not from scratch. I took a little bit of a couple of the elements. I can just show mine. But I like your text before, text after a lot more than mine. I'll show you what I did. But essentially, the first 6 rows are exactly the same as previous, up to the point where I get the player's hands. And then what I did was I put them back together. So I used the text join function to put them back together with a comma between each card. That meant that my last card, and I also put a manual comma with the concatenation with the ampersand with the concatenation operator. Put another column at the back so that I'm ready for more cards to come if I have to, right? So that's essentially the setup to take the starting deck of every player. The round numbers and the player numbers and all of that was the same logic. The way to extract the value is the same logic. The way to define whether a snap occurs is the same logic. To determine who wins is the same logic. It's still the player who places or who places the actual card that creates the snap condition. In this case, player 2 played that round, got a 10 match, and that's what caused the snap condition. So I think the only logic that remained, and Jason, interestingly enough, my running total year actually followed the same logic as yours, where I also got to 0 and every time got to 0. But that just became my index to determine what my pack was. So I didn't keep track of my pack dynamically or automatically. I kept track of it. So I did the same as you, Steyn. I basically had player 1 deck and player 2's deck. And I kept track of the number of cards in hand as well. That's just for my own sort of error handling purposes while I was building. But that basically allowed me to keep track of my cards. But what I did for adding the cards back, so every time I had to sort of every time I wanted to determine who plays and what card is played, I basically said, if it's 1, if that player number is 1, then take the first value from the text split of that. Otherwise, take the first value of player 2's deck, right? So that's how I sort of took the first card, and then to remove the actual cards, I did a substitute. So I substituted the previous card from that. I substituted the previous card from that person's deck, as well as the comma. So I removed the substitute. I removed the comma and removed the row, and then to add the cards back, to add the deck that they won back. If it was a snap condition, if player 1 won that round, I basically did a text join with an indirect with the row reference of the running total, if I remember correctly. I just want to see what I did, yeah. But it all made sense to me back then. But essentially, I think I took the row value and then did a text join. Oh yeah, of the row of the column reference less the number of cards won in the previous round, and that basically gave me the reference of the cards or the range essentially of the cards that was won by that person. But a lot less elegant than your solution, doing the same thing but a lot more tricky. Yeah, Jason, what did you do?
I think all of us had fairly similar layouts by the looks of things. Tracking decks and player decks and cards on the table decks. I think that my method to aggregate the cards that were collected was somewhat simpler. So I had the same sort of starting approach as you guys did, sort of do a text join back. So again, practically rebuilt the level 6 the logic. So put together the cards for player 1 and player 2, so you have their starting deck, and then the values and the snaps and all of this then kind of carried over. But then I also tracked the cards pile as you were going. And here again, I had that go back to 0 where there was a snap, same as you, Renier. And then basically what I said, if there's a, if there's a, well, it wasn't a 0, it was a blank. If there's a blank, like in this one here where the first snap occurred, if this cards pile is a blank, then I want to text join my deck. Sorry, where am I text joining? Text join the cards on the table with the card that was played. So I guess something that caught me out initially was that you play the card and then you get it back. So I guess, again, the fact that I went for a 0 or a blank here rather than just aggregating the card that was played made this slightly more tricky. But I think to put these back together for me was a little bit simpler. So I just did a drop of the cards above. So I did a text split of player 1 cards by the delimiter and just dropped the first one, because that then took off the card. And then I did a text join again with the same delimiter against the cards that are to be collected, and using an if error. So again, I forced the NA error in this section, and if error, I just made that inverted commas with nothing, so that you just text join nothing essentially. And so that actually was a fairly simple way to then just add the stuff together. I mean, it's quite a compact formula. The let play 1 deck here is completely redundant because it's just one thing. I think at the time I was thinking I might need to build out things, and then ended up doing player 1 and player 2 sort of independently, and then the rest sort of flowed. The only other thing I'll say is, as what we've seen on all of our screens, is just how pretty this looks to me. Seeing the cards, like, sort of, you can see where the snaps come, and it's visually very appealing to me, the way that this sort of plays out. And then you can see, player 2 was close to losing, and then they got a big windfall, and then they carried on going. It's just like, it's really cool.
I also like that a lot. That was also the sort of pinnacle to this case, was the fact that you could see the movements of the deck and how it grew and how it shrunk and stuff. So I also like that, and that's why I built mine out, so that I could see the whole thing the whole time. Okay. So that was essentially the case, except for the bonuses. So I guess let's get back to the bonuses. We did bonus 1 and 2 now. Bonus 3 was essentially just asking, if I just share my screen. Bonus 3 was just asking, what is the lowest? Oh, I think we did. Maybe we didn't. What is the lowest number of cards collected by the winner of the games in level 5? So if we look at level 5, we're basically asking who collected the most cards. So in that case, that person would be the winner according to these rules. And essentially, you were just looking for the lowest number there, and that would be 5. So I just again used my XLOOKUP for 0, and then you look for that exact value or the next larger item, returning the actual value. So I did an XLOOKUP returning the same value essentially.
Renier, why not just a min?
Oh yeah, I could have used the min. yeah. Because I was in XLOOKUP mode, I forgot about the min there for a second. Yeah, you see, Steyn, you always find the the easier ways. Yeah, the min. If I wasn't drunk with level 6, I probably would have used min. But after you build a large model like that, you tend to over-engineer everything, right? And then for bonus 4, the question was across all 110 games, excluding examples, which game number has no snaps on card value in the first 52 turns, i.e. after every card is played in the order described above. Ignore level 4 rules, only consider snaps on value. So in essence, this was very obvious where it would have come from, because all levels had answers, but the only level that could have had answers on a snap other than by card value, i.e. by suit, would be level 4. So the answer must have come from level 4. So that was your tip, and it would have been a low scoring game. So if you look at row 60 or game 68, essentially, it's not that low. It's 13. So there were 13 snaps on suit in that case. But all I did was, I think I took level 4, and I took the exact same logic from level 4 and just did a sequence of all 110 games. And then all I did was I just summed up, or I just took the value of the snap, the snap count value of all the games. So if I change this to game 68, I could see that there were 0 snaps on value. But then all I did was I did a data table and then looked up I looked up 0 in my data table. I think that's, yeah. I just looked for 0 in my data table and returned the game number. Don't know if you guys had different methods. Steyn, did you use another simpler method than I did?
No, I just also ran the data table for level 2 across all 110 games.
Cool. So you took level 2. And then bonus 5 is asking, after the first 52 turns, i.e. after every card is played once in the order described above, in all 110 games, excluding examples, which card value produced the most snaps? Ignore level 4 rules, only consider snaps on value. Thanks to Dim, these questions were very well explained. They were longer to read, but there should be no confusion on what we're asking. So essentially, we're asking which card value produced the most snaps. I think I did this under level 5, and essentially all I did was, and I think a good tip for guys out there is the fact that you can do a data table with more than one column. So essentially did the same thing, sequence of 110. Over here, I just did a unique of all of my card values. So I took all of the values because I know that this is 52 cards. I know that I'm covering at least every card once. Used the unique function, and I used it by column because I'm working across columns. So that gave me a column or a row of unique cards, and did a sort by column as well. The sort wasn't necessary at all. It was just more visually appealing to me. But the 10 had to actually be there in the A set, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, so did a sort of unique, didn't need the sort, and then just did a count ifs. So all I did was I counted for the value 10 in my values everywhere where snap condition was 1. And then after I did the count ifs across that for the example game, in this case, I could run the data table across all games. That counted all snaps for all cards, and then did a sum of that column for each of them. And then just did a lookup for the largest value, which was 31 in my list of cards, which returned the number 7. And that's pretty much it. I don't know if you guys have anything different that you did on bonus 5.
Well, I just combined it with my bonus 4 and used the same data table to run both those 410 questions or
Yeah,
levels.
yeah. It's also a good way to do it. Yeah. But I guess I guess that I guess that also sort of shows you that doing a lot of these cases and practicing a lot makes you a lot more fit for running these cases, especially under time pressure. If you have if you don't have a lot of time, building two data tables instead of building one would actually take a lot more time. So running everything in one data table makes a lot more sense. So I would have definitely preferred your method then in that case, Steyn, as well. But I think that's the case. So participants really struggled with this. I think the highest score we got was about 220 or 240 points, and that means that participant possibly, well, not too bad, but got out up to level 3 in half an hour's time. I know that the international participants who are used to card games would possibly get higher scores, but yeah, I think it's still, the competition is still very new in South Africa, and that's why I think a lot of the participants get or see these cases for the first time when it comes their way. And as soon as you don't know how to do a reverse sequence, you're pretty much buggered. Um, Especially when you want to do like level 3 onwards. I think level 3 you could have easily done visually, manually, to find the second snap. That was possible as well, especially if you have half an hour. But yeah, I guess pressure and a lot of things makes you do stupid things. So I guess that's our story, right, guys?
Yeah, just Renier, thanks for the competition, thanks for championing it. And I think it was really successful. We had a lot more competitors this year than we did last year, which is great. Hopefully next year we'll double up again. I think the representation from Africa and South Africa specifically in these competitions is improving, which is awesome to see from our perspective. And maybe one or two of the competitors will volunteer some case designs in the future as well, which will be great. But yeah, no, just thanks to you for sort of leading and driving the competition. It's been really fun.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it, and thank you to you guys as well. I mean, you could have easily participated and won the competition. So you're giving up a lot of prize money to assist me. So I thank you guys for the countless hours and the early mornings to create and test cases and stuff. Especially you, Jason, working at crazy hours of the day. But I guess as soon as you become a parent, that things change. Hey? Like sleep changes for you. The definition of sleep changes as well. But yeah, it wouldn't have been the same if you guys weren't there. So I really appreciate you. I think we make a great team, and I think it was definitely a team effort. So yeah, we'll hopefully be back for 2025 South African Excel Championships. Hopefully with more sponsorships. Hopefully with a media budget this time, and hopefully with double the participants, so that we can grow the sport and the financial modeling career in South Africa and Africa a lot more. Like you said, we definitely seeing a lot more participation across the continent, where when we started there were a handful. Now at least we can fill a taxi. So so I think the sport is growing, and we're seeing a lot more names up there. So so
That's such a South African joke.
it is. I don't think the international people would actually appreciate it as much as South African would. But yeah, so I think that's the important thing, right? So The effort for us is all in the passion of the game and the passion of a passion for Excel and a passion for problem solving and a passion for making it fun, making it enjoyable, not making it boring. And like I've said many times previously, I just want people to say, "Wow, I didn't know you could do that in Excel." I mean, like I said, participants coming to us and saying, "It's changed my life. It's changed the way that I do things." That's what we do it for. And then also for bringing more junior people to the game. We had two university students in the finals. One of the students, actually, Peter Pinar, he got third place, which is excellent, a very good result for a student. I think it's funded a lot of his enjoyments and a lot of his trips to Las Vegas to participate in the collegiate challenge as well. So it's all worthwhile. We're not taking away anything from it, but we're taking away that just the smiles and the experiences and seeing more names up there on the global scale. That's what we want to see. So thanks to the participants as well for joining us, and we hope you all join us next year again when we take on 2025's South African Excel Championship. I think we already have a couple of cases in the arsenal, but we'll think of more. We'll travel and we'll find experiences that South African that we can bring back to Excel. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Yes.